Dusty's grumble. Dusty Rivers crushed the missive, the thin paper rasping like brittle autumn leaves underfoot. He'd anticipated correspondence from Aunt Mildred, yes, but not this pronouncement, this intrusion. Arranged marriage, he spat, the words a bitter mouthful. Blue, his Australian shepherd, roused himself from his fireside nap, one ear perked in query. Dusty glared as if the dog himself orchestrated this lunacy. Believe this, Blue? Mildred, bless her meddling soul, has decided I require a wife. He flung the crumpled paper onto the rough table amidst dust motes and scattered cartridges. He raked fingers through his already unruly hair, sunlight catching the silver that laced the dark. 42, not old, yet hardly dewy-eyed. Marriage? He'd sooner face down a charging bull unarmed. Says it's for the good of the ranch, he rumbled, the sound vibrating through the sparsely appointed cabin. Claims I need an heir, someone to shoulder the load. Load? This is my life, not some burden. A soft whine escaped Blue, his wet nose nudging Dusty's hand. He always sensed Dusty's unease. Relenting, Dusty knelt, scratching behind the dog's ears. Don't fret, boy. No strangers waltzing in here to claim what's ours. He rose, pacing like a restless predator. Unbidden, a phantom bride materialized, the product of years enduring Mildred's matchmaking. He envisioned a prune-faced crone, her voice a grating shriek, forever knitting and lamenting the dust, oblivious to the rugged beauty surrounding them. Probably totes a cane and owns a Persian, he muttered, dripping with sarcasm. Blue's tail thumped a soft rhythm against the floor, a counterpoint to Dusty's brewing storm. He moved to the window, his gaze sweeping across his vast domain. Golden grasses danced in the breeze, extending to the horizon. Cattle dotted the landscape, dark shapes against the bright sky. This was his kingdom. He needed no queen, least of all one selected by his aunt. Probably can't even sit a horse, he scoffed, picturing the poor woman clinging desperately, her face a mask of terror. He cringed. He wished no genuine hardship, not even on a bride foisted upon him. Blue padded over, resting his head against Dusty's leg, a calming weight. She says her name is Eleanor, Dusty read, retrieving the crumpled letter and smoothing it with his calloused hands. Eleanor sounds like a drawing-room dowager, Blue? The dog merely gazed back, his brown eyes holding unnerving intelligence. Dusty often suspected Blue understood far more than he revealed. Rereading, he sought some loophole, some escape. Mildred had been thorough, detailing arrangements, the dowry, considerable, he noted with annoyance, and Eleanor's arrival. 2 weeks. A fortnight until his life irrevocably altered. He tossed the letter back onto the table, the sound stark in the silence. He poured a shot of whiskey from a time-worn bottle, the amber liquid a fiery bomb. 2 weeks, Blue, he murmured. 2 weeks to wriggle out of the snare. He swallowed more whiskey, the liquor failing to quell his turmoil. He pictured the absurdity of teaching Eleanor to ride, to shoot, to tolerate the gritty wind and the endless expanse. Cruel, even. He wasn't a brute. He couldn't condemn some hapless woman to such a life. Yet, what choice did he have? Mildred held a significant portion of the ranch mortgage. Her displeasure could be ruinous. He was trapped between duty and fierce independence. Blue nudged his hand, his eyes beseeching. Dusty knelt, burying his face in the dog's soft fur. I'm lost, boy, he confessed, muffled. Truly lost. He remained there, drawing strength from Blue's steadfast presence. The sun dipped, painting long shadows across the room. The cabin cooled, the hearth fire dwindling to embers. Dusty rose, his resolve firming. He wouldn't let Mildred, Eleanor, or anyone else dictate his fate. He'd find a way. He always did. He looked down at Blue, eyes sparking with purpose. Come on, boy, he said. Let's ride the fences. Need the air. He grabbed his rifle, and together, man and dog, ventured into the approaching night, leaving the crumpled letter and the specter of arranged marriage behind. For the moment, the cool night air, sharp with sage and the promise of rain, filled his lungs. As they rode, a plan began to coalesce, a desperate, audacious strategy, possibly his only recourse. Risky, almost insane, but it was a chance. Hoot's assurance. A plume of ochre dust heralded Hoot McTavish's arrival long before his dilapidated Ford rattled into the yard. Blue, resting at Dusty's feet as he honed a draw knife, perked up, a guttural warning rumbling in his throat. Settle down, fella, Dusty soothed, though a similar resentment stirred within him. He already surmised Hoot's purpose. The truck lurched to a stop, sending chickens scattering and a rooster erupting in a flurry of indignant squawks. Hoot, perpetually squeezed into a plaid shirt and high-waisted trousers, unfolded himself from the driver's seat, a slick, avaricious grin plastered across his face. "Dusty, you old dog. Just the man I was hoping to find." Dusty remained leaning against the workbench, the draw knife glinting in his grip. "Hoot, what brings you all the way out here?" He knew perfectly well the reason. "A proposition, Dusty, a proposition." Hoot slapped his leg, the sound cracking through the tranquil afternoon. "A significant proposition concerning your prospects." He winked, a gesture that sent a shiver of distaste down Dusty's spine. "My prospects are just fine as they are, thanks." Dusty's tone was level, devoid of any warmth. Hoot waved off his comment. "Now, Dusty, don't be like that. Your Aunt Mildred, God bless her, only wants what's best. And this is an incredible opportunity." He reached into the truck cab and retrieved a framed portrait, swaddled in what appeared to be a faded dishcloth. "What's this, then?" Dusty inquired, his gaze sharpening. "A peek at your brighter tomorrow," Hoot proclaimed, carefully unwrapping the picture. An old photograph, sepia-toned and slightly faded, revealed a woman's face. She was young, perhaps in her early 20s, with dark hair swept back and a high-necked gown suggestive of a different era. "Eleanor," Dusty ventured, though he anticipated the confirmation. The photo was undeniably decades old. Hoot's face split into a wide grin. "Isn't she a vision? A portrait of elegance and grace. This was taken, 20 years ago if it was a day. But believe me, Dusty, she's matured like a fine bourbon." Dusty stared at the portrait, a pit forming in his stomach. He envisioned Eleanor 2 decades hence, and a disturbing image of Aunt Mildred's peer materialized in his mind. He refused to contemplate a life shackled to a woman he couldn't love. "Hoot, I appreciate the gesture, but this isn't for me. I'm a rancher, not some citified fellow seeking a showpiece wife." Hoot's smile flickered, vanishing almost immediately. He clapped Dusty on the shoulder with jarring force. "Now, Dusty, don't be hasty. Consider the ranch. Times have been tight lately, haven't they? The parched earth, the plummeting cattle prices. This union, Dusty, is more than just about a wife. It's survival." He swept his hand around the yard, encompassing the weathered barn, the collapsing fences, the pervading atmosphere of bare subsistence that clung to the place. "Eleanor's family, they're established. They have resources. This marriage would breathe new life into this ranch, Dusty. You could mend the fences, purchase new livestock, perhaps even install that irrigation system you've always wanted." Hoot leaned closer, his voice dropping to a confidential murmur. "Imagine, Dusty. No more struggling to get by. No more fretting over ends meeting. You'd be set for life." Dusty glanced down at Blue, now standing, his gaze locked on Hoot. He knew the dog sensed his turmoil. He looked back to Hoot. "And what price would I pay for this prosperity?" Hoot's smile returned, broader and more predatory than before. "Nothing you won't get back tenfold, old friend. A little companionship. A beautiful woman at your side. And a ranch that flourishes once more. It's a pittance, wouldn't you agree?" He paused, awaiting Dusty's response. Dusty spat a stream of dark juice onto the parched earth. "I say it's my life, Hoot. And I'll be damned if I let anyone put it up for sale." Hoot's face hardened into a mask of displeasure. "Now listen to me, Dusty. Don't bite the hand that's offering bread. Your Aunt Mildred has your best interests in her heart. And this marriage, it's happening whether you approve or not. So you can either embrace it and reap the rewards, or you can resist it and end up with nothing. The decision rests with you." He pivoted and climbed back into his truck, the engine coughing and wheezing into life. He leaned out the window. "Think about it, Dusty. Really think about it." The truck roared away, leaving Dusty standing in a swirl of dust, the faded image of a young woman taunting him from the workbench. Blue nudged his hand with his wet nose. Dusty knelt and enfolded the dog in his arms, burying his face in the thick fur. He had a choice to make, undeniably. And he sensed with a sinking heart that it was far from an easy one. The journey begins. Dusty spat a stream of tobacco juice into the dust. Damnation! He slammed the lid of his saddlebag shut, the buckle protesting with a rusty squeal. Inside were the bare necessities, a change of clothes, a tin of beans, some dried beef, and a waterskin. Enough to survive a few days on the trail, though the thought of needing more than a few hours in Eleanor's vicinity made his stomach churn. Blue, his loyal Australian cattle dog, whined softly, nudging Dusty's hand with his wet nose. "Don't look at me like that, boy," Dusty grumbled, scratching behind Blue's ears. "I ain't exactly thrilled about this, neither." He cinched the saddle tight on his horse, a sturdy Appaloosa named Paint. Paint shifted impatiently, sensing Dusty's foul mood. The ranch felt wrong without the usual bustle of activity. The hands had scattered for a few days, sensing the storm brewing. Even the chickens seemed to cluck with a nervous energy. He swung into the saddle, the worn leather creaking beneath him. "All right, Blue. Let's get this over with." He nudged Paint forward and they started down the dusty track leading away from the ranch. The morning sun beat down, turning the already parched land into a shimmering oven. The air hung thick and heavy, promising another scorching day. Dust motes danced in the sunlight, swirling around them like tiny, irritating spirits. As they rode, the familiar landscape of Dusty's ranch began to give way to the rolling hills and scrubby brushland that separated him from the Caldwell spread. He glanced back at his own land, a wave of resentment washing over him. It was his sweat, his blood, that had built that place. And now some scheming ant and a slick-talking weasel like Hoot were trying to sell it out from under him. "That Hoot," Dusty muttered, his voice tight with anger, "thinks he can just waltz in here and dictate my life. I'll show him." Blue, trotting faithfully beside Paint, tilted his head, listening intently. "Mary Eleanor," Dusty continued, his voice rising in frustration. "Like I'm some broken-down old nag that needs to be put out to pasture. I ain't dead yet, Blue. I still got some fight left in me." He spurred Paint into a canter, the wind whipping through his hair, carrying away some of his anger. The rhythmic pounding of Paint's hooves was a small comfort, a reminder of the life he knew, the life he was determined to protect. The Caldwell Ranch came into view late in the afternoon, nestled in a valley between two rocky hills. It was a tidy spread, smaller than Dusty's, but well-maintained. He could see cattle grazing in the distance, their dark shapes stark against the dry grass. As they approached the ranch house, a woman stepped out onto the porch. She was tall and slender, with a severe look on her face. Dusty guessed it was Mrs. Caldwell, Eleanor's mother. He straightened his back, trying to appear more presentable. He hadn't bothered to shave or change his shirt before leaving. Figured it was a waste of effort. He reined Paint to a halt in front of the house, the horse snorting and stamping its feet. Blue sat at his heel, his gaze fixed on the woman on the porch. Dusty dismounted, his boots kicking up a cloud of dust. He looked at Blue, then at the house. It all felt surreal, like some terrible dream he couldn't wake up from. He took a deep breath, trying to steel himself for what was to come. "Afternoon, ma'am," he said, his voice rough. "I'm Dusty Rivers." The woman's expression didn't soften. "Mr. Rivers," she said, her voice cool and formal. "We've been expecting you." She gestured towards the house. "Eleanor is inside." A surprising greeting. Dusty crested the small rise overlooking the Song Ranch, Blue trotting faithfully at his heels. The Caldwell place had been all manicured lawns and ostentatious displays of wealth, a testament to money rather than land. The Song Ranch, however, breathed a different story. Barns weathered by time stood alongside corrals bustling with activity. The air, thick with the scent of hay and horses, felt honest. He expected to see her on the porch, perhaps in a rocking chair, a shawl draped over her shoulders. Aunt Mildred had been maddeningly vague, describing Eleanor's song as a pillar of the community, which, in Dusty's experience, usually translated to someone ancient and formidable. He steeled himself, ready to politely decline her offer, to explain his fierce attachment to the Rivers Ranch, to make her understand he wouldn't be bullied into selling it. But there was no rocking chair, no shawl. Instead, a figure moved with fluid grace among the horses in the corral. Sunlight caught the auburn strands escaping her tightly bound braid, illuminating the curve of her cheek as she soothed a restless mare. She wore worn denim overalls, the kind a ranch hand might favor, and her movements were confident, sure. Dusty squinted, disbelief warring with a strange, nascent curiosity. He nudged Blue forward and the pair started down the slope. As he drew closer, the details sharpened. The woman couldn't be older than 30. Her face, framed by sun-kissed hair, was striking, with high cheekbones and eyes the color of rich, dark earth. Strength radiated from her, not the brittle strength of someone clinging to power, but the deep-rooted strength of someone connected to the land. He pulled up to the fence, the mare she'd been tending nuzzling his hand. The woman looked up, startled. Her dark eyes widened slightly, and a faint blush touched her cheeks. "Can I help you?" Her voice was low and clear, carrying easily over the sounds of the ranch. Dusty swallowed hard. This wasn't Eleanor's song. This couldn't be. I'm looking for Miss Eleanor's song." A flicker of amusement danced in her eyes. "You found her?" Dusty stared, dumbfounded. "You're Eleanor." She nodded, a smile playing on her lips. "Lily, actually. Everyone calls me Lily." She leaned against the fence, crossing her arms, a pose that managed to be both casual and commanding. "And you must be Dusty Rivers." He dismounted, his movements feeling clumsy under her steady gaze. Yes, ma'am. I mean, Miss Song. Lily. He ran a hand through his hair, acutely aware of the dust clinging to his clothes. I was expecting. An old woman, she finished for him, her smile widening. Dusty felt his face flush. Aunt Mildred wasn't exactly forthcoming with details. Lily laughed, a warm, genuine sound that seemed to chase away the oppressive heat of the day. Mildred Caldwell has her own way of doing things. Come on, she gestured toward the house with a nod of her head. Let's get you some water and we can talk. He followed her, Blue trotting contentedly at his side. As they walked, Dusty noticed the way the other ranch hands subtly deferred to her, the respect evident in their eyes. This wasn't some pampered socialite playing at ranching, this was a woman who knew her way around horses and hard work. The porch was shaded and cool, a welcome respite from the sun. A man sat in a rocking chair, his face etched with lines of kindness and weariness. He rose as they approached, offering Dusty a gentle smile. You must be Dusty. I'm Mr. Song, Lily's father. Sir, Dusty said, shaking his hand. Mr. Song's grip was surprisingly firm, despite his age. Please call me Thomas. Lily tells me you raise cattle over by the river. Yes, sir. The Rivers Ranch. Dusty hesitated, glancing at Lily. It's been in my family for generations. A fine piece of land, Thomas said, his eyes twinkling. Lily tells me you're quite attached to it. Lily poured Dusty a glass of water, her eyes meeting his. There was a hint of challenge in her gaze, a silent question. He took a long drink, the cool water easing the dryness in his throat. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to shift, the image Aunt Mildred had painted crumbling before his eyes. This wasn't the desperate, arranged marriage he'd envisioned. This was something else. So, Lily said, leaning against the porch railing, tell me, Dusty Rivers, what brings you all the way out to the Song Ranch? The picture mix-up. Dusty, have a seat, Mr. Song offered, gesturing towards a time-worn leather chair in the parlor. Lily, a whirlwind of ruffled apron and lowered lashes, melted back into the kitchen. A subtle fragrance of lemon polish lingered, a testament to her unseen efforts. He lowered himself into the offered seat, the aged leather sighing beneath his weight. His hat remained clutched in his hand, the brim receiving a nervous twist. The whole scenario felt utterly bizarre. He'd braced himself for a showdown with a wily matriarch, only to encounter Lily. I imagine you're somewhat taken aback, Mr. Song continued, his voice carrying a fatigue that transcended mere physical strain. Dusty finally lifted his gaze, meeting the older man's. Taken aback doesn't begin to cover it, Mr. Song. My expectations were. He trailed off, searching for a way to phrase his thoughts without sounding utterly foolish. Mr. Song exhaled a weary sound. Eleanor. Indeed. That would be my mother. Lily's grandmother, in truth. My mother passed on 5 years ago. Dusty's jaw went slack, nearly unhinged. But the photograph. Hoot presented me with a photograph. Ah, Hoot, Mr. Song responded, a note of fond exasperation coloring his tone. Bless his heart, his intentions are pure. He likely unearthed the most ancient image he could locate. He's not gifted with organization. That picture must be decades old. It likely depicted my mother, Eleanor, in the bloom of her youth. A soft, melancholic chuckle escaped his lips. She possessed quite the beauty in her day, I am told. Lily bears a resemblance, especially around the eyes, you know. A wave of relief, almost intoxicating in its intensity, washed over Dusty. He wasn't betrothed to an elderly woman. He hadn't been hoodwinked, not precisely. Just profoundly misinformed. I offer my condolences for your loss, Mr. Song, Dusty stammered, the words feeling inadequate to the moment. And I apologize for jumping to conclusions. Mr. Song brushed off the sentiment with a wave. Water under the bridge, Dusty. I comprehend your hesitations. This entire arrangement, it's undeniably unconventional. But believe me, deception was never my intention. Dusty's eyes strayed towards the kitchen threshold where Lily was now engaged in stirring something within a bowl, her back toward them. The gentle sunlight filtering through the window painted streaks of fire in her auburn tresses. He experienced a twinge of something akin to guilt, perhaps? He'd arrived prepared for conflict, ready to defend the Rivers Ranch with every fiber of his being. He'd imagined a Machiavellian schemer attempting to fleece him. The possibility of this had never crossed his mind. Why, Mr. Song? He pressed, turning back to the older man. Why this unusual arrangement? Why me? Why not simply liquidate the ranch? Mr. Song tented his fingers, his gaze drifting into the past. This land, it has been in my lineage for generations. It's more profound than mere property, Dusty. It embodies our heritage. And Lily, her heart is entwined with this place. But she's quite alone now. She cannot shoulder the burden alone. The labor is too immense for one person. And well, my own years are advancing. He paused, inhaling deeply. I've observed the Rivers Ranch, Dusty. I am familiar with the Rivers name. Your family, you are reputable ranchers. Upright men. I harbored the belief. I believed that if the two ranches were united, they could flourish. That Lily would find assistance. Someone to share the weight, someone to safeguard her. Dusty shifted uncomfortably, feeling the weight of the unspoken implications hanging in the air. Safeguard her. From what? Or from whom specifically? And Lily consented to this? Dusty asked, his voice barely audible. Mr. Song offered a measured nod. She did. Eventually. She is a devoted daughter, Dusty. Her desire is to honor her family. Her ambition is to preserve this land. Dusty glanced back at Lily, who was now setting a platter of biscuits on a small table adjacent to the fireplace. She avoided his attention, a faint blush adorning her cheeks. He detected a resilience in her stance, a subdued determination that belied her unassuming demeanor. He had arrived anticipating a transaction. A purely business undertaking. He was coming to the realization that this was something vastly more intricate. He rose to his feet, his hat still firmly in his grip. Mr. Song, he stated, his voice taking on a resolved tone. Thank you for your explanation. I require some time for contemplation. Mr. Song nodded with understanding. Naturally, Dusty. Take all the time you require. Guest rooms await you upstairs. Make yourself at home. Dusty hesitated, then pivoted towards the kitchen. Lily, he said, his voice gentler now. Thank you for the biscuits. She lifted her eyes, her gaze briefly connecting with his. A fleeting hint of a smile graced her lips. You're welcome, Mr. Rivers. First impressions. Dusty shifted his weight, the worn leather of his boots creaking softly in the otherwise silent room. He felt like a bull in a china shop, all elbows and awkwardness, especially under Lily's steady gaze. He cleared his throat. So, Mr. Song tells me you haven't spent much time on a working ranch. Lily sat perched on the edge of a cushioned armchair, her hands clasped loosely in her lap. The afternoon sun streamed through the window, illuminating the fine strands of dark hair that had escaped her braid. No, she replied, her voice quiet but clear. Mostly city life. San Francisco. University. Dusty, desperate to bridge the gap, launched into a story about a rogue calf, a flooded creek, and a particularly stubborn mule named Agnes. He embellished a little, adding a dash of humor where he could. He painted vivid pictures of vast landscapes, the sharp tang of sagebrush in the air, the bone-deep weariness after a long day in the saddle. He wanted her to see it, to feel it, to understand the land he loved. Lily listened politely, her expression unreadable. He couldn't tell if she was bored, intrigued, or simply enduring his monologue. When he finished, breathless and slightly self-conscious, she merely nodded. It sounds challenging, she said, a flicker of something, amusement, in her eyes. Discouraged, Dusty glanced down at Blue, who was lying patiently at his feet, tail thumping softly against the polished wooden floor. Blue here's seen it all, haven't you, boy? At the sound of his name, Blue's ears perked up. He rose, stretched, and padded over to Lily, nudging her hand with his wet nose. Lily's face lit up. She knelt down, burying her fingers in his thick fur. Oh, you sweet thing, she murmured, scratching behind his ears. Blue leaned into her touch, his tail wagging furiously. Dusty watched, a strange mix of relief and frustration bubbling inside him. Here he was, trying to impress her with tales of grit and glory, and all it took was a friendly dog. He's beautiful, Lily said, looking up at Dusty, her eyes shining. What kind is he? He's a mutt, Dusty admitted. Part blue heeler, part who knows what else. Found him abandoned by the highway a few years back. Best ranch dog I ever had. Lily continued to lavish attention on Blue, asking Dusty about his training, his quirks, his favorite treats. Dusty found himself relaxing, drawn into her genuine affection for the animal. He described Blue's uncanny ability to herd cattle, his unwavering loyalty, the way he always knew when Dusty needed a comforting presence. As they talked, Dusty observed Lily more closely. He noticed the strength in her hands as she stroked Blue's fur, the intelligence in her eyes as she listened intently to his stories. There was a quiet confidence about her, a resilience that belied her delicate appearance. She wasn't some fragile flower wilting under the harsh western sun. She was something else entirely. He recalled Mr. Song's words about Lily's resourcefulness, her determination to protect what was hers. He saw it now, etched in the set of her jaw, the unwavering gaze she fixed on him when he spoke. She was stronger than he had anticipated, more complex, and infinitely more intriguing. Finally, Lily stood up, brushing a stray dog hair from her dress. "Thank you for telling me about your ranch," she said, her voice softer now. "It sounds like a very different world." "It is," Dusty replied, his voice husky. A silence fell between them, thick with unspoken questions and uncertain expectations. Dusty felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in a long time, a spark of genuine curiosity. He wanted to know more about her world, the world she had left behind, the world she might be giving up for him. He took a step closer, drawn in by the depth of her eyes. "Maybe," he said, his voice low, "maybe I could show you sometime." Lily's gaze didn't waver. "Maybe," she echoed, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "Maybe you could." The moment stretched, charged with a hesitant possibility. Then Mr. Song entered the room, his face etched with concern. "Lily, dear," he said, his voice a gentle rumble. "Are you all right? I didn't mean to leave you alone for so long." Lily turned to her grandfather, her expression softening. "I'm fine, Grandpa. Mr. Rivers was just telling me about his ranch." Mr. Song nodded, his eyes darting between Dusty and Lily. "Good, good. Perhaps we should all have some tea now. It's getting late." Dusty knew he was being dismissed subtly but firmly. He nodded, acknowledging the unspoken command. "Thank you for your hospitality, Mr. Song," he said. "And, Lily." He turned and walked towards the door, Blue padding faithfully by his side. As he reached the threshold, he glanced back. Lily was watching him, her expression unreadable. He left the room, the image of her, strong, independent, and undeniably captivating, burned into his mind. He still didn't know what he was going to do, but one thing was certain: this wasn't going to be the simple business transaction he had imagined. This was something far more complicated and far more dangerous. Storm clouds gathering. The atmosphere crackled. One moment, the sun blazed, parching the land and turning the earth to a fine, pervasive powder. The next, a chilling zephyr, almost malevolent, rustled the creekside cottonwoods. Dusty narrowed his eyes at the western horizon. A dark, contusion-like mass ballooned, eclipsing the sun's final rays. "That ain't your average summer sprinkle," he grumbled, instinctively scratching Blue behind his ears. The usually boisterous dog whimpered, huddling against Dusty's leg. He sensed the animal's unease, a visceral apprehension of the impending peril. He glanced at Lily, who was assisting her grandfather with the laundry. She froze, her gaze mirroring his towards the west. Even at this distance, he discerned the worry etched on her features. Mr. Song, ever observant, placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, his face an enigma. The wind intensified, lashing Lily's dark hair across her face. The acrid tang of ozone stung his nostrils. The cattle in the adjacent field, typically placidly grazing, began to congregate, their low moans escalating into anxious bellows. Dusty recognized the danger. A stampede loomed. He strode over to Mr. Song and Lily. "We're in for a rough ride," he said, his voice strained. "Looks like a real deluge is brewing. Gotta secure the stock." Mr. Song's gaze remained riveted on the advancing storm. "The animals know this land," he responded, his tone composed, yet with a subtle tension Dusty picked up on. "They will seek refuge." Dusty's jaw tightened. "With all due respect, sir, in weather like this, shelter isn't enough. They'll bolt. We need to get them to the lower range, the one with the rocky overhang." Lily's eyes darted between her grandfather and Dusty, wide with anxiety. "The lower range is closest to the river," she murmured. "It's the safest place," Dusty insisted. "The overhang will give them some protection from the lightning, and the fences there are solid. We can ride out and try to move them before it hits." Mr. Song remained inscrutable, his silence weighty. Dusty detected the older man's disapproval, a subtle current that had been present since his arrival. Was it mere distrust of an outsider, or something deeper? Finally, Mr. Song spoke, his voice measured and low. "You believe you can command the storm, Mr. Rivers?" The question transcended the weather. Dusty understood this intuitively. It concerned control, authority, the tacit agreement that was supposed to bind them. He met Mr. Song's gaze, unblinking. "No, sir," he stated, his voice resolute. "I can't command the storm, but I can do everything within my power to protect what's ours. And right now, that means those cattle." A peal of thunder reverberated across the plains, emphasizing his words. Lightning illuminated the encroaching clouds with an eerie, throbbing light. The cattle's bellows intensified, their agitation escalating. Lily stepped forward, briefly touching her grandfather's arm. "Grandfather, Dusty is right. Action is needed." Mr. Song regarded his granddaughter, his expression softening ever so slightly. He sighed, the sound laden with the weight of experience. Very well, he conceded, his voice subdued. But we do this together. I will not have you riding into that tempest alone. He turned to Dusty. What is required? Dusty felt a swell of something akin to relief, laced with a begrudging respect for the elder. Saddles, rain gear, and every hand we can find. And hope we can get those cattle moved before all hell breaks loose. He looked to Lily. Could you get the coffee perking and some food ready? We'll be soaked and half-frozen when we get back. Lily nodded, her eyes reflecting a newfound resolve. Of course. Be careful. Dusty gave a brief nod, then turned toward the stables, Blue faithfully padding after him. The storm bore down, and he knew the coming hours would test them all in ways he could scarcely foresee. Beyond the cattle's safety, the delicate accord between him and Mr. Song and the nascent connection with Lily hung in the balance, vulnerable to the forces gathering on the horizon. Working together. A violet sky, heavy with threat, pinned the land beneath it. Blue, sensing the unease, pawed at Dusty's leg, hackles raised despite the stifling air. An electric tingle danced across Dusty's skin, foretelling the storm's arrival. Move it, damn you all, he bellowed, the rising gale swallowing half his words. He kicked Whiskey into a sprint, herding the lagging riders. The cattle, usually placid, bleated a mournful counterpoint to the wind's increasing howl, their anxiety palpable. Mr. Song's men, still gripped by indecision, trailed behind, their progress labored. Then Dusty spotted Lily astride her mare, a determined set to her shoulders that belied her delicate build. She offered no shouts, no frantic gestures, yet her quiet resolve seemed to calm the herd, directing them towards the southwest corner of the open range. He pushed Whiskey towards her, stray tendrils of her dark hair lashing across her face in the buffeting wind. Where are you taking them? He roared. She gestured towards a nearly imperceptible notch in the distant mesas, swallowed by the gloom. Box Canyon. A tight fit, but those walls are sheer. Shelter from the worst of it. Dusty's brow furrowed. He knew Box Canyon, a Box Canyon by reputation. It's a gamble, Lily. Heavy rain, we're looking at a flash flood. No, she countered, her voice unwavering. The drainage runs away from it. My grandfather showed me. It's been a refuge for generations. He hesitated, surprised by this untapped well of her knowledge. He'd always compartmentalized this place as solely Song's inheritance, not hers. Yet, her conviction resonated. All right, you lead. The wind redoubled its efforts, snatching at hats and flinging grit like needles. Lightning fractured the sky, revealing the terrified white rings around the cattle's eyes. Dusty and Lily, now a cohesive unit, drove the herd onward. His voice, a booming force, urged them forward, while she wove among the beasts, her touch a balm to their mounting terror. Even Mr. Song's men, witnessing their collaborative command, quickened their pace, their initial hesitation replaced by mounting alarm. As they approached the canyon's maw, the first heavy raindrops began to detonate against the parched earth. Smelling sanctuary, the cattle surged, creating a jam at the narrow entrance. Dusty swore, envisioning a catastrophic stampede. Lily, acting without pause, dismounted, planting herself as an unlikely bulwark at the opening. She began to sing a low, lilting melody in a tongue Dusty didn't recognize, but the effect was immediate. The animals slowed, their panic receding as they responded to the soothing rhythm. One by one, she ushered them into the canyon, her voice a steady thread against the escalating storm. Dusty watched, astonished. He'd misjudged her, seen only a fragile woman bound by tradition. Now he perceived something else, a resilience forged in the land itself, a quiet strength that defied the tempest. The last of the cattle stumbled into the canyon as the heavens broke. Rain cascaded down, transforming the ground into a slick morass. Dusty and Lily, drenched and shivering, stood at the entrance, watching the herd settle into the relative calm within. He looked at Lily, her face a mask of mud and rain, her eyes burning with a fierce light. He glimpsed beyond the role of bride, beyond the obligation of family, and saw a partner, a survivor, a force of nature. Thank you, he rasped, his voice thick with emotion. You saved them. She shook her head, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. We saved them. Together. Blue, sensing the end of the crisis, nudged his hand with a cold, wet nose. Dusty scratched behind his ears, a swell of gratitude washing over him. The future remained unwritten, but in that moment, standing beside Lily as the storm raged, he knew one certainty: he wasn't alone. And perhaps, just perhaps, that was enough to build on. Respect and admiration. The stragglers of the herd stumbled into the box canyon's embrace, the wind a mournful cry at their backs. Rain hammered down, churning the parched earth into viscous mud, yet inside, the cattle found solace in their collective warmth. Song's men, drenched and disoriented, lingered near the entrance, watching the tempestuous weather unfold. Dusty, every muscle screaming in protest, swung down from his saddle. He raked a hand through plastered hair, the residue of adrenaline still buzzing beneath his skin, a strange cocktail of relief and utter weariness. He spotted Lily near a craggy overhang, a stark silhouette against the fading light. Her face was ashen, but her gaze held an unexpected strength as she examined her hands, no doubt cataloging the price of their labor. He trudged towards her, the mud clinging stubbornly to his boots. "They'll find respite here," he rasped, his voice raw. "This canyon has weathered far worse." A ghost of a smile touched Lily's lips. "I knew it would offer sanctuary. My grandfather shared tales of this place." Dusty halted. Did he now? He hadn't anticipated her familiarity with the land. "Then I'm in your debt, Lily." "Profoundly so." He hesitated, groping for sincerity. "I misjudged you." "Severely." She offered a slight nod. "Understandable. You were acquainted with a story, not a person." He toed the muddy ground. "Even so. Thank you. For this haven, for your help with the herd, for your composure when I was about to lose mine." The cattle were panicked. Reassurance was needed. Her gaze drifted to the clustered animals, a tender concern etched on her face. "They respond to a steady presence." Dusty scrutinized her. Rain slicked tendrils of dark hair to her cheekbones, and the wind had painted her skin with color. There was a vulnerability to her, juxtaposed with an undeniable fortitude. He'd witnessed that resilience today, not the delicate veneer of society, but a raw, unwavering grit displayed in the face of a potential disaster. "You have a gift," he conceded. "They were on the verge of scattering until you spoke. They are powerful beasts, yet susceptible to fear. At times, simply knowing they are safe is enough." He nodded slowly, a fresh perception unfurling. This wasn't a wilting flower forced into an unwanted union. This was a woman who intuitively understood people, who commanded respect with quiet dignity, who unearthed strength when it was most crucial. "Come on," he said, gesturing towards a shallow alcove in the rock face. "Let's escape the deluge. We need a plan to get everyone back to the ranch secure." As they sought shelter beneath the overhang, the storm continued its assault, the wind shrieking like a tormented spirit. Dusty watched Lily draw her sodden shawl tighter, her focus fixed on the downpour. He found himself studying her profile, seeking any semblance of complaint, any sign of fragility. He found none. Only a quiet determination. His mind flashed back to their initial encounter, to his own prejudiced assumptions. He'd seen only a comely face, an elegant figure draped in luxury. He presumed helplessness, a woman out of her element in this unforgiving terrain. How wrong he'd been. He recalled her knowledge of the land. He remembered the soothing effect of her voice on the cattle. He considered her courage, the unexpected steadiness she had provided. A spark of something akin to admiration ignited within him. He hadn't simply misjudged her, he'd been utterly blind. A complete fool. He cleared his throat. "Lily," he began, his tone gentler, infused with respect. After the storm breaks and we've returned, tell me about your grandfather. Share his stories of this land with me." Her eyes widened ever so slightly. "You wish to hear them?" "Yes," he affirmed, holding her gaze. "I do. I want to know everything." He yearned to understand how she'd become this woman, this unforeseen force of nature who had just salvaged his herd and perhaps even rescued him from his own ignorance. He sought the real Lily Song. The Lily Song veiled by societal expectations and familial obligations. The Lily Song who understood the secrets whispered by the wind and the silent language of cattle. The Lily Song he was beginning to deeply respect and, he dared to acknowledge, admire. A new beginning. The storm had moved on, leaving behind a world washed clean and smelling of wet earth and sage. Sunlight dripped through the canyon walls, painting the damp rock in hues of gold and amber. The cattle, restless during the night, were now grazing contentedly, their low mooing a soothing balm after the storm's fury. Hood McTavish rode into the canyon just as Dusty was finishing his morning coffee. The old man looked weary, his face etched with worry. He dismounted stiffly, his usual jovial demeanor replaced with a somber expression. "Dusty," Hoot began, his voice raspy. "I owe you an apology. A big one." Dusty raised an eyebrow, leaning against the chuck wagon. Lily was tending to a small fire, her movements graceful and efficient. Blue lay contentedly at her feet, occasionally glancing up at Dusty. "Seems there was a misunderstanding," Hoot continued, avoiding Dusty's gaze. About Lily. I was led to believe things weren't exactly as they appeared." Dusty remained silent, letting Hoot squirm. He already suspected as much. The old maid narrative had never quite fit with the sharp intelligence and quiet strength he'd witnessed in Lily. Mr. Song, he embellished, Hoot finally confessed, his cheeks flushed. He wanted to ensure the deal went through. Feared you wouldn't agree if you knew the truth. Dusty chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. The truth being, Lily's not some desperate spinster eager to escape a loveless existence? Hoot winced. Something like that. She's, well, you've seen her. She's resourceful, strong, a woman of her own mind. He paused, then added almost as an afterthought, and quite a horsewoman, I hear. Dusty glanced at Lily, a faint smile playing on his lips. That she is. Hoot shuffled his feet, clearly uncomfortable. So, where does that leave things? With the marriage agreement, I mean. Dusty straightened up, his gaze hardening. That depends on Lily. He walked towards the fire, his boots crunching on the damp earth. Lily looked up, her eyes questioning. He knelt beside her, his voice low and earnest. Lily, he began, taking her hand in his. I came into this arrangement with the wrong idea. I was focused on the ranch, on saving what my father built. I didn't consider you, not really. And for that, I'm truly sorry. He paused, searching her eyes. After these past few days, I've seen a different side of you. Your strength, your knowledge, your kindness. I was a fool to think you were anything less than remarkable. He took a deep breath. So, I'm asking you now not as a business deal, but as a man asking a woman he respects, do you still want to marry me? Lily's expression was unreadable for a moment. Then, a small smile touched her lips. Dusty, she said softly, her voice like the gentle rustle of leaves. I will marry you. Dusty felt a surge of relief wash over him. But before he could respond, Lily continued, her eyes sparkling with mischief. But only on one condition. Dusty's heart skipped a beat. And what's that? Blue has to be the ring bearer. Dusty laughed, a genuine, heartfelt sound that echoed through the canyon. Consider it done. He looked at Blue, who seemed to understand, wagging his tail excitedly. Hoot, who had been watching the exchange from a distance, let out a relieved sigh. He remounted his horse, his face creased with a genuine smile. Well, I'll be. Seems like things have a way of working themselves out. I'll ride back and let everyone know the wedding's still on. He winked at Dusty. And tell Mr. Song to keep his embellishments to himself from now on. The wedding took place a week later under a clear blue sky at the Rivers Ranch. The air was filled with the scent of wildflowers and the sounds of laughter and music. Friends and neighbors had come from miles around to celebrate. Mr. Song, initially resistant to Dusty's newfound independence and Lily's obvious influence, eventually conceded, a grudging respect evident in his eyes. He saw the genuine affection between Dusty and Lily and perhaps finally understood that control wasn't everything. Lily looked radiant in a simple yet elegant dress. Dusty, standing beside her, felt a sense of peace he hadn't known he was missing. As they exchanged vows, their eyes locked, a silent promise passing between them. And then came Blue's moment. The sturdy herding dog, with a small cushion tied to his back bearing the rings, trotted proudly down the aisle. He stopped in front of Dusty and Lily, wagging his tail as if presenting them with the most precious gift in the world. The crowd erupted in applause. Dusty took the ring, a simple band of gold, and slipped it onto Lily's finger. As he did, he knew that this wasn't just the beginning of a marriage, but the start of something new. A new beginning built not on obligation or deception, but on mutual respect, trust, and maybe, just maybe, a little bit of love.